in presidential election petition number 1 of 2016, made recommendations for the amendment of the Constitution provisions governing elections in Uganda. That under Article 104(2) and 3 of the Constitution, the 10-day period within which to file a petition in case of presidential elections and the 30 days within which the court has to make a decision is inadequate, and it should be reviewed. And that Article 1046 of the Constitution should be amended to increase the number of days within which the Electoral Commission is required to hold a fresh election where a presidential election annulled, and that the late enactment of relevant electoral legislation has a negative effect on the conduct of elections, and any election-related law reforms must be undertaken within 2 years of the establishment of a new parliament. Madam Speaker, further aware that this very parliament was sworn in on 18th May 2016, and thereafter following the decision of court, these electoral reforms must be completed by 18th May 2018. I'd like to note with concern that up to today, government has not presented to Parliament any amendment in conformity with the Supreme Court decision. I'm concerned that eligibility requirements for a person to be elected as president or district chairperson, being part of the necessary electoral reforms, must be reviewed as well to comply with Article 1 of the Constitution, which gives the power to the people that they have the absolute right to determine how they should be governed, and Articles 21 and 32, which prohibit any form of discrimination on the basis of age and other factors. Firmly convinced that there is a need to review the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda to address the above gaps, to implement the Supreme Court decisions as well as any other related matters. Now, therefore, Right Honourable Speaker, this motion is moved requesting that this Parliament accepts and grants me leave so that I introduce a bill for an act entitled the Constitution Amendment Bill 2017, a draft of which is attached hereto, and do order the publication of the said bill in preparation for its first reading. Madam Speaker and honourable colleagues, I beg to request that you receive this motion, and you permit me leave to introduce the private member's bill. I beg to move.
Is it seconded? Is it seconded? Seconded by several members. Motivate, but don't go into the merits. Don't go into the merits of the issue.
Just the justification. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable colleagues, it is a year past the day we were sworn in as the 10th Parliament. Our executive has done nothing to effect the court decision which I pointed out in the motion. I therefore find it imperative, as a Member of Parliament, under the Constitution, Article 94(4), to bring this bill with a view to meet the timeliness and the timeline set by the Supreme Court. I find the proposed amendments justified for the following reasons. In terms of time for filing and determination of the petition, Madam Speaker and honourable colleagues, I'd like to associate with the observation of court that the time provided for the petitioners to file their petitions and for court to determine the petition, being 10 days for the petitioner and 30 days within which court must analyze the evidence and make a decision, as provided under Article 1042 and 3, is highly inadequate, and I find it absolutely necessary and justified to amend the law with a view to increase the time for filing and determining the petition. Consequent on this, colleagues, if we increase the time for filing and determining the petitions, this will necessitate that we adjust the time for elections backwards accordingly. Madam Speaker, in terms of time for holding fresh elections, I find it justified, looking at the current provision in the Constitution, that in case court annuls a presidential election, a fresh election must be conducted within 20 days. This is highly inadequate. Colleagues, even we members of parliament, in case court orders for a fresh election, we are given 60 days. In the neighborhood, it has just happened. Court annulled a presidential election, and they ordered for a rerun within 60 days. I therefore find, in my view, that the current provision of only 20 days for a fresh election of the president is not justifiable, and hence the need for an amendment. In terms of qualifications of the president, the district chairperson, Madam Speaker and honorable colleagues, the current law provides for an upper and lower age limit for a person standing for election as president, district chairperson. It is my view that the elections qualifications of candidates falls directly and is part and parcel of the necessary electoral reforms as recommended for reform by the court, because without the candidates, you don't have the elections. Madam Speaker, I propose that we do look at these provisions, that the president and the chairperson, you are given time limit, and we shall certainly point out why we need to provide the necessary amendments. But for today, I beg to request honorable colleagues to observe that Article 1 of the Constitution provides that the Ugandan citizens have the right to choose the people and the manner in which they should be governed, and that the will of the people under Article 1.4 is expressed through free and fair elections. So it is my considered opinion that to tell people to choose their leaders only within a certain choice bracket is highly discriminatory, and this should be amended in line with Article 21 and Article 32, which order for equality of citizens. And colleagues, Article 32 specifically obliges us to take affirmative action to redress marginalization and discrimination based on age, gender, disability, and other reasons created by history, tradition, or custom. Therefore, I find it absolutely justified to move amendment of these provisions to ensure that these archaic restrictions within the Constitution are removed, and we do give full power to the population to select their leaders as given by the constitutional mandate, Article 1. I'm convinced, Madam Speaker, beyond any doubt, that in doing so, we are actually exercising the role and responsibility of members of Parliament as provided under Article 259 and Article 262 of the Constitution. I therefore beg to move and request, honorable colleagues, that you grant me leave to proceed and introduce a private member's bill to effect the necessary amendments. I beg to move. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Yaku. But also sit. There are seats on this side. Honourable members, there are seats here. You can. No, you speak from there. No, I'm telling you, the members who are struggling there, you come and sit comfortably. Yes.
Madam Speaker, I can also use the other microphone.
I don't know whether it's working well. You want to use that one? Speak from there.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand here to second the motion of my colleague Honourable Raphael Magyezi. And Madam Speaker, according to Article 1 of the Constitution, the power belongs to the people who will choose how they want to be governed through regular and free-fair elections. Madam Speaker, the people have the right to choose the leader they want without necessarily looking at the age. It will be improper to deny somebody a right because of age. Uganda has the capacity and freedom to choose from the person they want to choose. If in accordance with the rules that govern our elections, it is very important that people are given the choice which they prefer to choose from. Age should not be a factor that hinders the freedom and rights of any Ugandan. Madam Speaker, that article is very discriminatory. If you are above 35, it prohibits you from being voted for as president. Whereas for the members of parliament and the district chairpersons do not have this kind of restriction. It is necessary that this imbalance is addressed as provided for by the Constitution. Madam Speaker, constitutionally, there are people who are marginalized. And this was also highlighted in the Constitution. We have the disabled, we have the youth, we have the women. But the Constitution clearly states in Article 32 that there will be affirmative action against this kind of people who have been marginalized. As today as we speak in this parliament, we have a couple of women. It is because we are no longer looking at women in a marginalized way. The same applies to the youth. The same applies to the disabled. From local council 1 up to 5 at the national level, we have leaders without discriminatory. Now when it comes to the elders, we totally write them off completely. Madam Speaker, it is improper for us to look at the elderly and we discriminate them, and that is clearly against the Constitution, where it says that all marginalized races of people should be given a chance through affirmative action. We don't even have an upper chamber in this country where we would put the elderly, and all of us are bound to become aged. Nobody is growing getting younger. We are all growing getting older. It doesn't mean that we are now becoming irrelevant to the country. It is high time that now we look at this article in the Constitution and put things right with due respect to those who wrote the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the Constitution is not a cast in stone. We have the right to determine the appropriate legislation of our time and to review the laws and make corrections where necessary. Uganda is operating under multi-party dispensation. The political parties have the mandate to choose their leaders. We cannot decide for the political parties to choose selectively. If a political party feels that an 85-year-old man is able, or a woman, to lead them and win an election, then why not? It is improper for us to think that parties should be restricted from choosing their leaders. I believe even me, if I'm 75 and above at one time, I can be president for more than 2 terms, as long as I'm still reasonable and the doctors think that I can think upright. Madam Speaker, Uganda is a very good example of countries which have respected democracy. You look at a country like Israel, it never dispenses of its leaders. They leave the leaders at whatever age to compete for power. Because even in our cultural society, we keep consulting our elders because they have a vast experience and knowledge. That's why some people say of Magezi. It doesn't mean that we need only to look at people who are very young without looking at people who are old. You look at some people, Madam Speaker, somebody has been an attorney, a state attorney, a private attorney. He has also practiced. He has been a Solicitor General. He has been a Minister of State for Justice. He has been a Minister of Justice. Then today is the Chief Justice of Uganda.
Procedure, Madam Speaker.
And he cannot contest for president. Madam Speaker, we cannot deny people like Honourable Raphael Magyezi, the Chief Justice of Uganda, from contesting for president. With due respect to that, Madam Speaker, we also have other countries who have presidents who are more than 75 years old.
Now, you know, I said you should not go into the substance. That justification is for the other, when there is a bill, if they allow you.
I agree with what you're saying. but like the outgoing leader of opposition who has just gone out, I had to put her point clear. I also thought I should put mine clear.
No.
But I want to summarize by seconding the motion.
Order.
And with that, I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Kafuzi. Kafuzi, where are you?
Francis Chan, an American pastor. Our greatest fear should not be failure, but rather succeed on things that do not matter. I stand for you, Right Honourable Speaker, to support and second the motion before us today, because I know, I believe, and I'm convinced that it matters for us all as a young nation, a growing democracy, and peace-loving Ugandans. In the making of our Constitution, it was emphasized under the democratic principles that the state shall be based on democratic principles which empower and encourage active participation of all citizens at all levels in their governance. In the same vein, Article 21 of the Constitution prohibits discrimination and guarantees equality of all Ugandans under the law. Right Honourable Speaker, according to Morris and Reed, in a book titled Uganda, the Development of its Laws, Constitution, Uganda, the Development of its Laws and Constitution, a good constitution should neither be rigid nor flexible. A rigid constitution will not possess the qualities of adaptability or adjustability. A good constitution must provide a method of change so that it can be changed and adopted without revolution. According to Article 259, Clause 1 of our Constitution, Parliament is empowered to amend the Constitution by addition, variation, or repeal of any of its provisions in accordance with the procedures set forth. Right Honourable Speaker, Article 94 of the Constitution provides us rights as members of this House to move private members' bills. And going by Article 183 of the Constitution, a person who is 35 years and above is allowed to stand for LOC5 chairperson, and yet a person who is 18 years above and has the other legal qualifications is not allowed to stand for LOC5. That alone, I find to be contradicting the provisions of Article 21 of the Constitution and the democratic principles that require us to be all-inclusive. In the same vein, Article 102 of the Constitution entirely states that any Ugandan who qualifies to be a member of Parliament can be president, except that he should be 35 years old and not more than 75 years. Right Honourable Speaker, I find it disturbing that the same Constitution allows an 80-year person to vote, but does not allow a 75-year-old person to participate in being elected for. That alone, I consider to be a contravention of our democratic principles and a departure from the provisions of Article 21 of the Constitution. Furthermore, the Supreme Court, which is an independent arm of government, whose findings we are enjoined to legislate or to adhere upon, to legislate into law, provided in the case of Amama Mbabazi versus Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and others, Supreme Court Presidential Petition 1 of 2016, among others, that Article 104, 2 and 3, relating to the time of filing a presidential petition, which is 10 days, should be amended to grant more time from 10 to 30 days, and to increase the period of determining the petition from 30 days to 60. The Supreme Court also provided that Article 104, Clause 7, which sets 20 days within which to hold a rerun or a by-election in the event that an election has been nullified, those days should be expanded or increased from 20 either to 60 or 90 days. Members, I encourage you to borrow a leaf from our neighbors in Kenya and begin to imagine what would happen to our poor and tiny economy if the Supreme Court were to do as the Kenyans did, well knowing that the Supreme Court has the capacity to nullify not only the presidential election, but all other elections that will have been held on the same day, including your election and mine. While I have heard some members of the public and even some members of parliament saying that these amendments should be taken to a referendum or a constitutional review commission.
Honourable members, just stick to the request. Don't go into those details.
In the premises, Your Honor, Madam Speaker, I believe it is incumbent upon us as members of Parliament, and it is well within our powers and authority to carry forth with the proposed amendments. I beg to move.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mule.
Right. Honourable Speaker, I stand before this august House to second and support the motion to seek leave tabled today in this august House by our honourable colleague, Raphael Magyezi. Right, Honourable Speaker, Article 94, 4B gives a member a right to move a private member's bill. It is against this background that I strongly rally behind my brother, Honourable Raphael Magyezi, in support of moving this private member's bill to amend the Constitution to be accommodative and bridge the gaps that currently exist in our own Constitution. Madam Speaker, Article 51, 1 and 2 give a voting right to all Ugandans ages 18 years and above, the voting right and a duty to register for public elections or a referendum. The same right, therefore, that is given to Ugandans of age 18 and above age 75 should also be given the same right to offer themselves for election. Right, Honourable Speaker, we are governed under the principles of democracy. And our second and first objectives and principles of democracy states, as a state, the state shall be based on democratic principles which empower and encourage the active participation of all citizens at all levels in their own governance, which means there is no breach under what Raphael has tabled, because everybody will be given opportunity to choose how they should be governed. Madam Speaker, world over, there are principles of democracy, and it's not anywhere written that age, especially, even in practice, given all examples where the upper age limit is stated anywhere. Age is not a yardstick to leadership qualification in democratic setting of countries like Uganda. And if we are to go in a regional integration that we all yearn for, Madam Speaker, a balanced law has to be, an accommodative law has to be amended to fit us into this regional integration. Hence, Article 102B of our Constitution is contradictory and under the democratic principles. Madam Speaker, the democratic principles gave rise to Article 1 of the 1995 Constitution that gives power to the people to govern through their will, and the people shall express their will on who shall govern them and how they shall be governed through regular, free, and fair election. And we are not saying anybody is not going to be governed through his own will. We don't mind whether the Ugandans choose who or who, but we want an accommodative and a balanced constitution. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, as a seconder to this motion, I'm convinced to the best of my knowledge that the motion in which a member of this, the motion is within ambient of the provision of Article 159, 1 and 2, and no article in this motion seeks to introduce a private member's bill, convenes Article 262, 261. Therefore, I second the motion tabled before you in this August House, seeking leave of Parliament for amendment of various articles in the Constitution as stated in the motion. I beg to move.